My name is Marin Vale, 32 years old. The night before Christmas, my daughter and I taped a paper snowflake to the window and pretended we could see our breath, even though the heater rattled and the cookies we put out were store brand. Kay is 6, old enough to memorize reindeer names, young enough to whisper secrets to a thrift store snow globe. I told her we'd keep things small but glittery. She squealed, then fell asleep, hugging the pajamas I bought for $5.99, sparkles pressed into the fabric like stars trying their best. When my mother told me in early December, "We can't afford Christmas this year," I didn't argue. I nodded, said I understood. I really did. Groceries were a math problem no one seems to solve anymore. Rent climbed, while our salaries watched from the curb. I didn't expect magic. She cried a little when she said it. It breaks my heart not to have anything for the grandkids, and promised we'd do a nice breakfast together. Keep it simple. I hugged her in that kitchen, with burned coffee and a stack of coupons on the counter, and said I'd bring cinnamon rolls. It felt like a capitulation and a truce. On Christmas morning, I gave Kay her one gift, sparkly pajamas, and a tiny snow globe with a chipped polar bear inside. She said she loved them, then spun in a circle so fast, the glitter turned into a galaxy. We ate toast with cinnamon sugar, and I thought, maybe this is enough. Maybe enough is the only thing that's still honest. Then I made the mistake of opening Facebook. At the top of my feed, a video auto-loaded, Lindsay Live. My sister's voice, high and breathless. It took a second for the background to register. The brick fireplace, the cream rug, the framed sailor print above the mantel. My mother's living room. My mother's living room, not mine, gleaming like a catalog spread. Tree exploding with glass baubles, gold ribbons spiraling, dozens of gifts, bows fat as peonies. Lindsay's kids tore paper like it was their job. Apple, Nike, Lego, Beats. One twin shrieked over a PS5, while the other climbed into a mountain of branded boxes that looked like a display in a mall window. In the corner of the frame, my mother laughed. She filmed with her phone, the way a person films a sunrise on an island they saved all year to see. "This is what love looks like, Mare," she crowed. The words were sugar-dusted, then nailed into me. Kay leaned against my arm, quiet. We watched for a long moment, the sound of other children's joy, filling a room we weren't in. She didn't cry. She held it in like kids do when they're afraid the grown-ups might break. "Mom," she said finally, not looking up from the screen, "why didn't Santa come to us?" Something in me folded, then sharpened. I scrolled without speaking, the way a person looks for a parachute in a room full of curtains. Screenshots. First the party, the gift pile, the polished floor shining with light, then my bank app. December 3rd, $2,400 transfer to Mom. Memo. Mortgage. Love you. The message I wrote when Mom said, "We're behind, just for this month," and I believed her because belief was cheaper than suspicion and had always been the currency in our house. I posted 2 screenshots, one of the transfer, one of the tree. Above them, canceled. No sermon, no captions about fairness or grace or betrayal. I turned off my phone and set it beside the plate with cold toast. The room felt like it does after a song ends at a kid's recital, parents clapping to fill the space where silence might reveal too much. At exactly 8:45 a.m., pounding rattled the door. Not knocking. Pounding. Kay startled, her shoulders rising like she could hide inside them. I told her to stay in the kitchen, then opened the door and stepped into my mother's weather. She looked half-dressed for the role of concerned matriarch. Slippers, coat crooked, hair flattened on one side like she'd driven with the window down. She pushed past me without waiting. The smell of cold air and drugstore perfume walked in with her. "How dare you air private things on Facebook," she hissed, words leaking through clenched teeth. "You don't understand. Lindsay's kids needed a real Christmas. They've been through so much. You made me look like a liar." I stood there and let it pass over me. The storm front always arrives as a first-person plural, we, as if love is the billboard and we're just the cars stuck in traffic below. "Did you use the mortgage money for their Christmas?" I asked. Only that. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She stared at the floor like there might be a prompt written there and then. Instead of choosing truth, she looked toward the kitchen and said too loudly, "We had to even things out. They would have been crushed." A line I didn't know existed drew itself between us. You chose, I said, keeping my voice even, because I learned long ago that shouting is a currency the guilty can spend, but the innocent can't afford. And I am choosing. Her eyes flashed, a wounded flare that looked like love's opposite. You're being petty, she said. You're punishing me. I could feel Kay listening. I could feel the edges of the house listening too. You should go, I said. We're done here. For a full second, I thought she might slam a cabinet or sweep an arm across the counter the way she did when I was 15 and said out loud that I felt like a visitor in my own home. But she lifted her chin and said, low and strangely calm, you will regret this. Then she left, coat flapping, slippers whispering on the steps like a second threat. The door clicked shut. I slid the deadbolt home with the certainty of a vow. In the kitchen, Kay arranged her snow globe next to the cinnamon shaker, careful as a museum guard. We're still doing cinnamon rolls later? She asked. Later, I said. Right now I need to make a list. After she drifted back to drawing reindeer with serious eyebrows, I sat at the table and wrote in the notebook where I keep grocery math and phone reminders and the lines of poems that don't fit in my mouth. At the top of a blank page, I printed one word, boundaries. Under it, I wrote the things I paid for that were invisible until I stopped paying. The phone plan, Costco, grocery runs, emergency copays, and of course, that mortgage I carried like a secret weight because my father insisted, we're good for it, kiddo. And I always wanted to believe some part of the story where we're all in the same boat instead of watching mine sink while theirs adds another passenger deck. I wasn't going to set fire to the bridge. I was going to close the toll booth, not to punish, to price the crossing according to truth. I thought of the way my mother had said, this is what love looks like, on that video, while my bank transfer scrolled under my thumb. Maybe, I thought, love looks like paying what you owe, including the debt of honesty. Maybe love looks like a door that closes and locks, because the only way to keep what's safe inside is to keep what's dangerous out. My phone buzzed from where I'd left it face down on the counter. I flipped it. Messages sprouted in rows the way weeds do after a rain. Mom, you didn't have to humiliate me. Take down the post. Lindsay, you're jealous and it's sad. The kids needed this. Dad, call me. We need to talk like adults. Uncle Tony, family breakfast still at noon? A laugh bubbled up, wild and humorless. Adults, family, need. Words that meant one thing in dictionaries and another inside our walls. I set the phone back down without responding and went to stand in the doorway where I could see Kay's profile, her tongue peeking out as she drew the Y in Rudolph, as if the act of watching her draw a letter could anchor me to the version of love that didn't require an audience. By late morning, I had a plan and 2 more screenshots labeled and time-stamped. Not revenge, just record. When you grow up in a house where stories are remodeled to fit the furniture, proof becomes the only structural beam that holds. I wasn't out to convince anybody. I was out to stop being convinced of things that weren't true. I washed my hands, floured the counter, and rolled cinnamon and brown sugar into soft dough while Kay told me in absolute seriousness that reindeer hooves make a tapping sound like pencil tips if you listen late enough. We slid the pan into the oven, and I set the timer for 22 minutes, which felt like a small act of faith, enough time to rise, not so much time the sugar burns. In those 22 minutes, I let myself feel what I'd been suppressing since the video. The sting of being told be grateful. The cold of being told simple is plenty while watching plenty spill out of a room that used to hold me. And under that, a calmer truth. If they were willing to spend the money I sent to keep a roof over their heads so the camera could catch the laughter of children tearing ribbon, then they were willing to spend me too. They already had. When the timer chimed, I pulled the pan from the oven and set it atop the stove to cool, the glaze crackling as it met heat. Kay clapped, and for a moment the kitchen smelled like Sunday mornings that belonged to no one else. I cut 2 squares, handed her the bigger one, and thought, this is what love looks like. I wish I could say there was peace after that the post evaporated, that Mom slept it off and woke contrite. But my family does not metabolize boundaries. They hoard them in a closet, then throw them back at you later as proof that you were cruel. I knew it was coming. I just didn't know how fast. At 1:13 p.m., a neighbor texted me a screen record of Lindsay's story. A caption that said, Some people should be happy for others. Over a slow pan of the same living room, gifts now stacked like a shrine. My name wasn't in it. It didn't need to be. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I rinsed the mixing bowl. I looked out the window at the paper snowflake Kay had taped, its edges curling just enough to betray the tape underneath. The poinsettia on the sill drooped because I always forget how often to water plants that pretend to be invincible. Later, I told it. We're doing later now. That night, I lay in bed and watched the ceiling fan stir air that smelled faintly of sugar and a perfume I'd outgrown. We're going to do this quietly, I whispered to the dark. We're going to do this right. The plan wasn't complicated. No spectacle, no more public screenshots, no more debates on a battlefield where truth gets edited. Cancel what they assume will always be there. Replace explanation with absence. Replace permission with locks. Replace fear with file folders labeled with dates. A wind brushed the window. The snowflake rustled. Kay rolled and pressed her knee into my side the way she does when she senses my teeth are clenched in my sleep. I smoothed her hair and pictured my mother's slippers on my porch, the coat askew, the face of a woman convinced that love is measured by what you can take when no one is watching. Later, I told the ceiling, starting now. On December 26th, I woke before the sun, made coffee that tasted like bark, and opened the Carrier account website. 3 phone lines glowed on the dashboard. Mom, Dad, and Lindsay's oldest. 10 years ago, I'd added them just for a bit until things even out. Things never even out. They calcify where you let them. My finger hovered for a heartbeat over the first toggle, then I slid it gray, one by one. A quiet click from the speakers marked each disconnection. It felt like trimming a wick, like preparing a room for sleep. By noon, Lindsay texted from an unfamiliar number. Our phones just stopped. Is there an outage? The faux bewilderment was the same tone a magician uses to ask, where did the coin go? I put the phone face down and answered the only person who mattered. Kay, we're building a fort or a spaceship? She chose both, so we dragged blankets into the living room and made a star-folded roof that didn't have to hold anyone else's sky. That evening, I logged into the shared Costco account and removed 2 cards. 3 days later, Dad left a voicemail, polite to the point of parody. Hey, kiddo, tried to pick up a few things. The card didn't go through. Thought it might be a mistake. The way he said mistake made it sound like a swinging door I could hold open again with a sigh. I deleted the message and watched steam curl from a pot of rice until it disappeared. January's mortgage still left my account on the 1st. I let it. Not generosity, evidence. I wanted to see whether they could look me in the eye and pretend nothing happened while cashing a deposit marked past due. They could. They did. Not a thank you. Not even a period in a text. Just the same public cheer from their feeds. Motivational quotes framed over morning smoothies. Snow angels outside the house I had just paid for. That month, I kept a list. Not the kind you tape to the fridge. The kind you fold into your pocket and carry around to touch when someone tells you the story wrong. Item 1, phone lines, canceled. Item 2, Costco, removed. Item 3, January mortgage, observed. I added timestamps and that word again, boundaries, until the page looked like a map you can follow back to a place no one is allowed to claim. February arrived with thin light and a message from Mom on the 3rd. Hey, sweetie, things have been rough. If you have anything extra for food this week, we'd appreciate it. I read it twice and felt nothing but the shape of the sentence in my hand, like holding a pebble. All those weeks I'd scheduled Instacart for her, bread, lettuce, her favorite hazelnut creamer. The app would ping, delivered, and I'd picture bags settling on her porch like a sigh. This time, I didn't order. I wrote back, Kay says hi. The 3 dots bubbled, stopped, bubbled, died. I put my phone in a drawer and taught Kay to braid yarn into a tail for the spaceship fort we were now calling a meteor-proof castle. Uncle Tony messaged next, his emoji repertoire, the bright plastic kind you find in a toy bin. Family dinner for Lindsay's birthday. We're all pitching in for a gift. You in? I sent him a screenshot of Lindsay's Gucci box still open on Mom's floor in that video, the ribbon hanging like a punchline. I didn't add a word. He saw it, left me on red, then posted some sunrise photo with the caption, choose joy. I chose to turn off notifications. Mid-February, Lindsay tried 3 different approaches inside a 24-hour window. First, Mom says you've been acting weird. You okay? Then, I know you're upset, but the kids miss Kay. I miss her. Let's talk. When neither got a response, a voice note came in, soft edges rounded like a cushion. We've both said things. We shouldn't let it spiral. Family is family. I listened to it once, the way you test a lock, and then I blocked the number she'd borrowed. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the sound of a plan rehearsing itself in another room. I could hear it through the wall in small ways. The way Mom's baking post doubled, the way Dad checked in with an innocuous thinking of you that carried no weight, the way an old friend of Lindsay's liked my Christmas screenshot a month late as if she'd just now discovered the exhibit. Easter fell early that year. I hid plastic eggs around the backyard, under the fennel that had somehow survived winter. Behind the cracked bird bath Kay insisted we keep for aesthetics. We were painting wooden eggs on the porch when Kay's iPad pinged with a message from a safe contact. My own name, Mom, her teacher, and 2 cousins were the only ones on that list. The icon preview was my mother's face with confetti. I wiped my hands and opened it. The video started with the same living room angle as Christmas. Fireplace, tree replaced by garland, and one of the twins held up a basket so jammed with branded toys it looked like a store window display. "We love the Easter Bunny," he shouted. My mother's voice bloomed behind the camera, syrupy. "You better thank him. This is what love looks like." A twin asked, "Are we going to see Kay?" And Mom answered, throat sweet, "Not this year. Her mommy's being difficult again." The sentence landed with the heaviness of a door slamming in a house you no longer enter. Kay watched the screen, blinked, then stood, gathering her paints and carrying them inside without a word. I stared at the frozen frame, Mom's reflection in the black TV glass, like a ghost filming her own funeral, and I felt the December list ignite. I opened the bank portal and clicked the recurring mortgage payment. "Cancel," the box said, as if it needed my permission more than my explanation. I gave it both and neither. Then I called a locksmith. "Same locks? New keys?" he asked, in the tired voice of a man who has seen too many thresholds crossed. "Better locks," I said, "and a peephole I can trust." He came the next morning with a tool bag and hands that moved like the good kind of ritual. Kay stood on a chair and watched, solemn. "This keeps us safe?" she asked. "It keeps what belongs here, I said, and tucked the phrase into the space where lullabies go. That week, I did the other kind of housekeeping, the administrative kind you can miss until you need it. I logged into the school portal and double-checked Kay's emergency contacts, me and her godmother, Mara. In the other approved adults list, I saw my mother's name, added back when hope was still cheaper than caution. I removed it, saved, and took a screenshot. The cursor blinked at the end of the line like a metronome. I set it by my heartbeat and waited for it to slow. I started seeing foreshadow where I might once have seen guilt. The art center, where Kay loved the bird collage class, had a public bulletin board in the hallway. A flyer appeared there one Tuesday. Community food drive. No one is alone. A sticky note clung to it like a second mouth. God doesn't turn his back on family. Maybe you shouldn't either. The handwriting was familiar, the curves of letters always trying a little too hard. I took a photo. I asked the receptionist if any adults had been waiting around the parking lot after class. She frowned. "There's been a woman the last few afternoons," she said. "Said she was waiting for her granddaughter. We asked her to wait by the street." The receptionist's smile faded. She didn't. On March 1st, Mom didn't call. She mailed. The envelope was off-white with my first name spelled in a way that might be a mistake or a taunt. Inside, a draft will, copied on a cheap printer, we, being of sound mind, leaving home, belongings, and financial assets to Lindsay, who remained faithful. I laughed, a single sharp sound, because the house and belongings were largely underwritten by the girl they had crossed out in blue ink. A yellow sticky note on the top page read, "You made your choice, so did we." I slid the document into a folder labeled Evidence and poured a glass of water to rinse the taste of paper from my mouth. 2 days later, A coworker I hadn't had lunch with since before the pandemic emailed, "Hey, your mom said you've been going through a lot. Hope you're okay. Coffee soon?" An old friend texted, "Lindsay reached out, said you've been different. If you need to talk, I'm here." I stared at the messages and felt strangely affectionate for how predictable they were. My family had always been good at crafting a narrative and then lending out the chorus. That afternoon, Kay and I walked to the park near our apartment. The air had that thin, generous light that makes everything look newly painted. She spotted a dog with a crooked ear and beamed. "He hears secrets better," she whispered, petting him like a confidence. I sat on the bench and wrote in the notebook, "They will try access through doors they didn't install. School, church flyers, the kindness of strangers." Then I drew a square around the sentence and a key beside it. Not art, a blueprint. At bedtime, I switched off the lamp and lay listening to the building's quiet. Someone's shower, a distant laugh, a slice of music through a wall. Kay turned in her sleep, her hand landing on my collarbone, anchoring me to a body that exists in the present tense. That's where I wanted to live now, not in my mother's video loops or my sister's curated charity. Here, where cinnamon rolls cool and forts become spaceships, and a locksmith leaves 3 new keys on the counter with a nod that says, "You did the right thing." I dreamed that night of the Facebook tree, but in the dream, the ornaments were tags with numbers on them, and every time a bow fell to the floor, a door swung open that wasn't mine. In the morning, I made a new list. Item 4, emergency contacts purged. Item 5, locks changed. Item 6, mortgage canceled. Beside each, I wrote a single rationale. 4, safety. 5, safety. 6, truth. When Kay woke, she padded into the kitchen and climbed onto a stool. "What's next on our space mission?" she asked. I showed her the list and said, "We check our oxygen, we check our radios, we check our doors." She nodded, dead serious, then stuck a star sticker next to each line. Stars, after all, look like asterisks. And asterisks, if you're careful, are just another word for conditions. Later, on my way to drop Kay at art, I caught my reflection in the car window at a red light. I looked like a woman who had closed a door and locked it, not to keep people out, but to keep a child's room warm. My phone buzzed in my bag. I didn't need to pull it out to know it was someone asking when I'd be done being difficult. I considered it anyway, the way you might lift a stone and look under it. Then the light turned green. I drove on. At the art center, the receptionist smiled. We put up a notice. Authorized pickups must show ID, no exceptions. She tapped a clipboard like a metronome. "We're tightening up." I thanked her and walked Kay to her class. She squeezed my hand. "Paint me a nebula," I whispered. "Make it loud." She winked. "Louder than a PS5, she said, and I almost laughed at how good it felt to know the reference would survive, but not the ache. On the way home alone, I passed my mother's street out of habit. I didn't turn. The compulsion flared, then quieted. A child on a scooter laughed, the wheel clattering over a crack. The sound widened the day. I rolled down my window for the first time in months and let the air move through the car like forgiveness I didn't owe, but could afford to feel for myself. The next attempt, I could sense, would not be through my bank account or my door. It would show up where they could still pretend love is a master key. I made another list when I got home. On it, one word: school. By March, the silence grew heavy, the kind that makes you feel like the world is waiting for you to crack first. My phone stayed still. No calls, no texts, no late-night guilt trips, just quiet. Too quiet. But I knew better. Silence in my family never meant peace. It meant planning. The first sign came not through them directly, but through the mail. A plain white envelope slid into my box. No return address. My name written in shaky cursive. Inside, a draft will. Cheap printer ink, pages stapled crooked, but the message clear enough. We, being of sound mind, leave our home, belongings, and financial assets to our daughter Lindsay, who has remained faithful and supportive through our final years. No inheritance is to be given to our daughter Marin, who has chosen to separate herself from this family. On the top page, a yellow sticky note in my mother's neat, looping hand. You made your choice. So did we. I sat at the kitchen counter for a long time, staring at it. Not because I cared about their house or things. I'd already paid for more of them than I ever admitted, but because of the theater of it. The performance of being wronged. They wanted me to feel disowned, so I'd crawl back, guilty, begging to be written back into their story. Instead, I slid it into the folder I'd labeled evidence. I poured a glass of wine, let the burn settle in my throat, and tried to move on. 2 days later, the emails began. Old coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly popped up. "Hey, Marin, just checking in. Your mom mentioned you were having a rough patch. Hope you're okay." Then an old friend. "Heard from Lindsay. She said you've been acting different. If you need to talk, I'm here." Different. Rough patch. The phrasing was too rehearsed. They were building a narrative, brick by brick, the way you build a house you plan to trap someone inside. I didn't reply. I knew better. Then the flyer. Kay came out of art class one afternoon with a folded paper in her backpack. It was for a church food drive. Nothing unusual until I saw the sticky note attached. God doesn't turn his back on family. Maybe you shouldn't either. The handwriting was unmistakable, my mother's slanted cursive, softened by years of birthday cards and shopping lists. I called the art center immediately. The receptionist hesitated before answering. "We've had some complaints," she admitted. "A woman's been hanging around the parking lot the last 3 afternoons. Said she was waiting for her granddaughter." My blood went cold. Did she describe the granddaughter? "She didn't need to. She used your daughter's name." They'd asked her to wait on the street. She didn't. I thanked them. My voice clipped and hung up. The walls felt like they were pressing closer around us. That night, I sat at the table with my laptop open and started a new Google Doc. Title, Family Evidence Log. I listed everything with dates, times, and screenshots. The mortgage transfer, the Christmas video, the Easter message, the will, the emails, the flyer. I photographed the sticky note. I uploaded the voicemail, where Dad asked if I was just going to let the house go. I included the Costco removal and the canceled phone lines. Every piece, every proof, lined up like soldiers, ready for inspection. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was preparing. And still, they pushed. From a burner account named Family First came a string of messages. "Your daughter doesn't deserve to grow up like this. She deserves us. You'll regret this when she's older." Then photos, old pictures from family albums. Kay at 3 with chocolate on her chin, Kay's 4th birthday crown, K.A. asleep on Grandma's couch. And then videos. My mom's voice, soft, syrupy. "We love you, Kay. We're still here." The last message was a voice memo, just heavy breathing, gravel crunching under footsteps. They were playing with me, but fear wasn't the chord they struck anymore. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I documented it, added it to the log, and closed the app. The next day, I called my cousin Angela. She had always kept her distance from the family's circus. Once, years ago, she'd called my mother stage 5 manipulative, and I'd laughed nervously, too afraid to agree. This time I didn't laugh. I told her everything. She wasn't surprised. "Lindsay told a friend of mine that you lost everything," Angela said. "She's been saying Kay isn't in school, that CPS might get involved. She's laying groundwork, Marin. They're getting ready to swoop in if they can paint you unfit." My stomach dropped. It was worse than I thought. Not just exclusion, not just humiliation. They were trying to rewrite me out of my own child's life. Angela hesitated, then added, "One of my friends is a paralegal. She saw that draft Will you mentioned. If they mailed it to you knowing it wasn't legal, that's not just manipulation. That's mail fraud. It's traceable." Her words sank like stones. Mail fraud, legal terms, traceable. This wasn't just toxic family drama anymore. This was coercion. This was criminal. Angela offered to connect me with her friend. I accepted. The next week, I made moves. First, I created a new email address, gave it to Kay's school, and instructed them to funnel all communication there. Then I purged every emergency contact that wasn't me or Mara, her godmother. Second, I installed cameras. Front porch, backyard, even a hallway cam inside, aimed at the door. Not because I wanted to live under surveillance, but because I knew I had to. Third, I booked an appointment with a family lawyer. His office smelled of lemon polish and the stale confidence of hundreds of custody battles. He flipped through my folder without expression, then finally leaned back in his chair. "Have they tried to contact your daughter directly?" he asked. I told him about the Easter video, the art center flyer, the food drive parking lot, the burner accounts, the gift bag my mom left at Kay's school weeks earlier. He nodded once, decisive. Then you don't wait. You file for a restraining order, not just for you, for your daughter. No contact, no exceptions. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. And if they escalate? He gave me a thin smile. Then we escalate legally. Every step they take is another brick in your case. Let them build the wall you'll use to keep them out. That night, I tucked Kay into bed, smoothing the blanket she still insisted be tucked under her toes. She looked up at me, eyes heavy with sleep. Mom, are they coming back? I brushed her hair back. No, not anymore. She didn't cry. She didn't frown. She smiled, small and certain. Good. Then we can make cookies this weekend. I kissed her forehead, turned off the lamp, and stepped into the hallway where the new camera's red light glowed faintly. For the first time, I didn't feel like prey waiting for the next strike. I felt like a fortress. Walls rising, gates closing, watchtowers lit. They thought silence would break me, but silence was just the sound of me getting ready. The certified envelope arrived on a Thursday morning, wedged in the mailbox between a pizza flyer and Kay's art class newsletter. The paper was stiff, official, my name misspelled by one letter as though that would make me flinch. Inside was a single photo, me, standing in my driveway, groceries balanced in my arms. The angle was wrong, taken through a car window, slightly blurred by glass. There was no note, no signature, just that photograph. I sent it straight to my lawyer, who forwarded it to the police. Hours later, a detective called back. We traced the P.O. box where it was mailed, he said, opened with a fake ID, but the security footage shows a woman matching your sister's description. He spoke clinically, like this was routine, but all I heard was they're watching me. Not just scheming in whispers or spreading lies online. Watching. I didn't cry. I didn't even panic. I sat at the kitchen table with the photo laid flat, the corners curling like it was ashamed of itself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt proof stacking in my favor. The next escalation came on a Monday morning. Kay was singing to herself in her pajamas, humming a tune she'd learned in art class while I packed her lunch. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I declined it. It buzzed again and again. 6 times in half an hour. Then a text slipped through, bypassing my blocks with some third-party spoofing app. The sender ID read Lindsay, glowing on my screen like a ghost I'd buried. She's going to hate you when she's older. We would have given her everything. You took that away. I set the phone down. My hands didn't even shake. I poured Kay's juice like nothing had happened, though a part of me filed the words away, every syllable another nail in their coffin. That afternoon, the school called. The secretary's voice was tight. Hi, Marin. Someone came in asking to pick up Kay. Said she was your mother, claimed there was an emergency. When we asked for ID, she said it was in the car and left. The blood drained from my face. She didn't come back, did she? No, the secretary said quickly. We checked the footage. Baseball cap, sunglasses. But the build, the walk, it looked like her. My mother, attempting to take my child. I called my lawyer within the hour, then the police. We added it to the restraining order file, attempted custodial interference, violation of the no-contact order. This wasn't just toxic anymore, it was criminal. Days later, I discovered the most chilling piece yet. Kay had abandoned her old tablet, a beat-up one she only used for drawing apps. While fixing its settings, I stumbled into a folder of drafts. Messages never sent, just saved like hidden letters. Hi, sweetheart. We miss you so much. Santa kept your presents here. Don't worry. Mommy doesn't let us talk to you, but we still love you. You can write back anytime. It'll be our little secret. My chest hollowed. They weren't just trying to get to me anymore. They were trying to crawl into her mind, wedge themselves between us with a whisper disguised as comfort. I'm safe. Even worse, they'd uploaded family photos to the app's cloud storage. Old pictures of Kay asleep in their house, her old bedroom at Grandma's. Images meant to tug at her memory, to confuse her loyalties. I asked Kay if she'd seen them. She nodded, small, ashamed. I didn't want to tell you, she whispered. I didn't want you to feel bad. She was 6, and she was already protecting me. That broke something in me deeper than anger ever had. That night, I wiped the tablet, boxed it up, and bought her a new one. Clean, locked down, every password changed. I sat her on my lap and told her what I could in words she would understand. Sometimes people, even people who say they love us, don't make safe choices. That's why we keep our circle small. That's why it's just us. She looked at me with those serious eyes that make children seem older than they are. So, they're not coming back? I shook my head. No, not anymore. She smiled. Good. Then we can bake cookies this weekend. The messages didn't stop. A burner account appeared. Just a string of numbers for a name. She'll never forgive you. I typed one word in reply, noted, then blocked it, deleted the app, and handed the evidence to my lawyer. 4 months passed. No more knocks at the door. No more flyers tucked into backpacks. No more burner messages except the occasional faint attempt that died in spam filters. But I knew they still whispered. Old coworkers told me Mom claimed I was emotionally unstable. A neighbor said Lindsay was praying for Kay to be rescued. They would never say it to my face. They didn't need to. Their stories had lost power the moment I stopped performing mine for them. At home, life found rhythm. Kay laughed freely again, her giggles shaking the walls of our apartment like music. She drew comics where she was a superhero with laser eyes and a psychic puppy that devoured villains whole. At night, as she drifted toward sleep, she sometimes whispered, "I'm glad it's just us." Me too. Because what my family never understood was this. I wasn't weak because I gave. I wasn't weak because I cared. The moment I stopped letting them spend me like currency, I discovered something they never expected. I could end it, not with fireworks, not with revenge, with one decision, no more. And I meant it.